our Brevard City Council regular meeting of Monday, May 6th. And I just want to say welcome to everybody that has come here in person and also to everybody that is watching us online. I'd like to introduce the people sitting up here. To my far right is our city attorney, Mac McKellar. Next to him is Councilman Lauren Wise. Next is Councilwoman Pamela Holder. Then we have Councilman Mac Morrow. I'm Mayor Maureen Koploff. To my left is our city clerk, Denise Hodgson. Next to Denise is Mayor Pro Tem and Council Member Gary Daniel. Next is Councilman Aaron Baker and our city manager, Wilson Hooper. With that, I would like to ask Victor Foster to come forward. Victor is I believe, the associate pastor at the Glade Creek Baptist Church, and he will give our invocation tonight. Thank you, Vic.
Thank you for having me. Heavenly Father, we truly thank you for this opportunity that we have here tonight. I want to lift up every councilman and praying that you will put them on one accord with you. Give them the wisdom and knowledge they stand in need of as they deliberate each issue. We pray that your name will be glorified in all this, that the community will be blessed for the work that they do. Thank you, dear God, for the wisdom that you have given each and every one. For us in the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen. Vic, tell us a little bit about Glade Creek Baptist Church.
Glade Creek, we work hard to try to have an impact in the community where we live and also in just in the town period. We have outreach programs where we try to reach what we call the least, the last, the leftovers. And we want to work a lot with the youth and spend time with them. And each member is responsible to try to be active not only in the church but in the community as well.
Okay.
So,
And where is the church located?
it is on Glade Creek Road. It's on Kemp Road. I think the exact address, if you put in the GPS, would be 35 Kemp Road, right off of Glade Creek. So,
And is everyone welcome to come to your services?
everyone is welcome. We love for you to just come and just fill the sanctuary up. Yes, the door is always open. God's door is never closed.
Good to hear. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. If everyone would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Attention, honor, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Madam Mayor, you do have a quorum. All members are present.
Okay. Council, you got the draft agenda sent to you. Are there any proposed changes to the agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda is approved. Council, you got the draft minutes of the April 1st, 2024 regular meeting. Are there any changes or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. At this time, we will have public comments. Do we have anybody signed up?
Just a couple.
Okay. And, okay. Public is invited to speak during the public comment portion at this time on any topic unless it is a public hearing item on this agenda. And we do have one public hearing item on the agenda tonight. Anyone who wants to speak must register with the city clerk, which is what this sign-up sheet is. When it is your turn, step to the podium in front of City Council. State your name and address clearly. Limit comments to 3 minutes or less and avoid repetition. Direct comments to the full council, not to an individual council member or to staff. Groups are encouraged to appoint a spokesperson on their behalf. I will call people up in the order in which they have signed. The first person is Nora Jane Montgomery.
Hello, my name is Nora J. Montgomery, and I am speaking on behalf of Brevard Bike Alliance, a grassroots organization that seeks to use engagement, education, and advocacy to enhance human-powered transportation and recreation. We believe safety, access, and equity strengthen our community. I am speaking to you tonight to urge you to retain the $132,000 of funding toward the Multi-Use Path Fund. We appreciate the budget is tight this year, but we fear abandoning this dedicated money will be a step backward for the trail and for our community. Over the years, Council has repeatedly pledged to the citizens of Brevard to build and complete the Esteto Path. The project was first discussed by Council as early as 1996, and the earliest section was completed in 2003. For 20 plus years, we have chipped away at completing a multi-use path that would connect our schools, our businesses, and our community. Currently, the City of Brevard reports that the project is 85% complete. With just 15% remaining to complete this meaningful capital project, abandoning annual dedicated funding would be a message to our community that we do not care about completing the projects we started long ago. During your annual budget prioritization retreat, Council members stated the importance of finishing the projects already begun. Of 7 goals set during this retreat, completing the Esteto Trail checks 4 of those goals: infrastructure, economic development, safety, and connectivity and transportation network. In August 2018, the city passed a resolution to complete the construction of the Esteto Path within 3 years. Just over a year ago, Council unanimously adopted the pedestrian and bicycle plan. Of the goals listed in the document, the top priority was completion of the Esteto Path. Barely a year old, it is imperative that we see this plan enacted. We assert that the Esteto Trail is indeed a critical link for our students to travel to school safely, for folks who don't have access to vehicles to be able to go to work, the grocery, the pharmacy, for our local community members to have access to recreation opportunities, including the imminent Acosta Trail, and for our community to reflect inclusivity, wellness, and safety. We are here today to ask you to honor the promises you have made to the people of Brevard and to finish this project before you choose to cut the dedicated funding.
30 seconds.
While we do thank you for the $25,000 you've allocated to the fund, we believe it is crucial to retain the annual earmarked funding of 1 penny per tax dollar. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Montgomery. Our next speaker is Emma Zanetti.
Hi, I'm Emma Zanetti, and I wanted to address all of you this evening. On behalf of some of the owners of businesses on West Jordan Street. My business is called Newfound Artisan, and I'm here on behalf of me, Paper and Wood, and Star Spangled Press. Our businesses, like I said, are located on West Jordan Street in the heart of Brevard. The purpose of me being here today is to express our disappointment with the city's communication regarding the stormwater upgrades that are being conducted in the Times Arcade Alley on West Jordan Street. We are also concerned about the extended timeline for the project. To date, there has been very little official public communication about the persistent closure of Jordan Street. To be clear, we are not upset about the project in general, as we are all well aware of the importance of this project to address critical infrastructure issues. We are happy that the plan was to complete the project during the slower season. However, we recently learned via a Hub for the Arts Committee meeting that the project will not be completed before White Squirrel Festival, a weekend, as originally planned. We also learned that there was an agreement made with the city and/or contractors to pause work during lunch service at Square Root to accommodate the restaurant's desire to serve lunch on their patio. It is disturbing to know that this agreement took place without consideration for the other businesses that would be affected by this decision. Only one can assume that by taking extended breaks to accommodate one business has led, at least in part, to the delay that was just communicated to us via our Arts Committee meeting. In addition to this recent news, we are disappointed that the city has not been consistently communicating with the general public about Jordan Street closures. The lack of communication has been brought to the attention of the mayor, the planning department, and the heart of Brevard. We do not believe the communication breakdown is the fault of the communications director, who has demonstrated a strong ability to communicate clearly and effectively. We suspect the communications director is not being given the necessary information from the planning department, which is ultimately responsible for the management of the project.
30 seconds.
We are collectively asking the city to ensure that moving forward, there is clear and consistent communication to the public about street closures on Jordan Street and the impact those closures will have on the businesses located there. For example, we would like the communications to include whether a street closure means sidewalks are also closed or not, whether people are still able to access businesses and the public parking lot on Jordan Street. We believe these communications can be made via the city's text messaging platform as well as its social media platforms. We're also asking for another stakeholder meeting so that businesses and other stakeholders can receive an official update and engage in discussion with the city staff regarding the management of this project and how it continues to affect our business.
Time, Ms. Zanetti. Thank you. Okay, that is all of the signups for public comment. All right, at this point, we will move into certificates, awards, and recognition. And I believe we have a very special recognition right now. If I would ask Chief Tom Jordan to come up, our Chief of Police, and Police Officer Wilson Bunn to please come up.
I wanted to talk a little bit. First off, it's a joyous occasion when we have a promotion, but under some somber circumstances. I don't know if many of you have heard, but we lost 4 law enforcement officers in Charlotte just last week under very tragic circumstances, which is why I wear the mourning band on my badge. Today we're here to present Wilson Bunn, who was a detective with us. He came to us after serving in Asheville PD since 2012. He left there in 2018 to join the Henderson County Sheriff's Office, and he was in their major crimes as one of their detectives there. Wilson has been in patrol. He's been with K-9. He has been a major crimes detective, crisis negotiator, CIT, which is Crisis Intervention Team, and probably a few more I'm forgetting. I'm sorry, Wilson. I've literally got a whole page of stuff that he's done. And when we advertised for a detective position, he answered the call. And it's a testament to the agency that we are getting some really good people heading our way. And Wilson represents this. Wilson came in as a detective, took our sergeant's process, and now stands before you after being promoted to sergeant. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask his family, and you can tell, you can introduce him, of who is going to pin the badge on the Wilson.
My daughter Rebecca and Bella. The little one Elizabeth, she's here to entertain you all.
Rebecca and Isabella, this is your dad's badge, and this is very important. It serves him every day. So you're gonna have to find a way to get it on him without killing him. Probably gonna give you some help, okay? So here, I'm gonna give this to you, and you're gonna stick it on him. And he's gonna help you. Trust me, it's a lot easier to do this with the shirt off, but it's not that kind of counselor. Thank you, ladies.
All right, we have a number of additional proclamations today. First, on behalf of all of our elected officials, I just want to say congratulations. And so we are so pleased that your family could join me for this really wonderful occasion. So thank you and congratulations. Okay,
Yeah, I'm
and
back.
look who's back.
I'm back.
Look who's back. Because we have proclamation number 2024-09, National Police Week and Peace Officers Memorial Day 2024. Whereas the Congress and the President of the United States have designated that there be a National Law Enforcement Officers Week, and whereas the members of the law enforcement agencies of North Carolina play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedom of the citizens of the state. And whereas there are more than 8,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Brevard Police Department and the Transylvania County Sheriff's Office. Whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored during the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's 36th Annual Candlelight Vigil on the evening of Monday, May 13th, 2024. And whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the problems, duties, and responsibilities of their law enforcement offices, and agencies, and that members of those agencies recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence or disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression or intimidation. And whereas the citizens of Brevard recognize and appreciate the contributions made by law enforcement officers at all levels of government. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Maureen Coppola, and the Brevard City Council call upon all citizens to observe Wednesday, May 15, 2024, as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and May 12th through 18th, 2024, as National Police Week in Brevard, North Carolina, and that all of our people join in commemorating law enforcement officers past and present who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities. In so doing, they have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. In witness hereof, I have set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Brevard to be affixed this 6th day of May, 2024. Chief Jordan, thank you. So how many police officers do we have?
We have 25 police officers and 30 employees total, all serving a role within the Brevard Police Department.
And we are so fortunate here in Brevard to have such high-quality, dedicated, and professional police officers on our force. And thank you, Chief, for everything that you and that all of our officers do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
366, I believe.
And that's- Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And our next proclamation is Older Americans Month. And I would like to ask Dr. Paula Hartman-Stein to please come up. Proclamation number 2024-08, Older Americans Month. Whereas May is Older Americans Month, a time for us to recognize and honor older adults and their immense influence on every facet of American society. And whereas through their wealth of life experience and wisdom, older adults guide our younger generations and carry forward abundant cultural and historical knowledge. And And whereas older Americans improve our communities through intergenerational relationships, community service, civic engagement, and many other activities. Whereas communities benefit when people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds have the opportunity to participate and live independently. Whereas we must ensure that older Americans have the resources and support needed to stay involved in our community, reflecting our commitment to inclusivity and connectedness. Now therefore, I, Maureen Koploff, Mayor of Brevard, do hereby proclaim May 2024 as Older Americans Month in the City of Brevard. This year's theme, quote, "Powered by Connection," unquote, emphasizes the profound impact of meaningful interactions and social connection on the well-being and health of older adults in our community. We call upon all residents to join us in recognizing the contributions of our older citizens and promoting programs and activities that foster connection, inclusion, and support for older adults. And I'm presenting this to Dr. Paula Hartmanstein, who is our community coordinator for our new Age Exchange Community Initiative. Dr. Stein. And before I get off this topic, I'm also going to mention, there are two handouts there. We have a survey that we are trying to do that, about how age-friendly Brevard is. So if you are a resident of Transylvania County, not just the city, the whole county, and you are over the age of 50, now I'm not going to try and guess who in this room qualifies, but if you qualify, please take one of these. It has a QR code and a link to the survey, and I'm asking each member to please fill it out. And if you really don't want to do an online survey, there are paper copies sitting up there on the table right over here. Please take one of them and just drop it back at City Hall. But this is really important for us to get a feel for just how friendly our city is for older residents so that we can look at how we can improve. So, again, Older Americans Month, thank you, Dr. Hartmanstein.
We have 152 thus far, so we hope to increase that significantly after today and tomorrow at the library, where I give a talk to explain the age-friendly initiative.
Wonderful. Our goal is to get at least 500 surveys.
I want 1,000.
That's why she's our community coordinator. All right. And our next item, I'm really excited about because this is something we have not done before. I'm going to read a joint proclamation, and I'm going to ask our members from TC Strong to come up here. We've got Nicole Essenberg and Beth Ford representing TC Strong. And Rick, did you want to come up too? Rick Emos from TC Strong. In the 7 years that I have been an elected official, I have never seen a proclamation that was jointly done by the City of Brevard, the Transylvania County Commissioners, and the Mayor of the town of Rosman until tonight, where we have a joint proclamation because this topic is so important across the board, and it transcends any differences that any of these elected officials had. So, proclamation. Mental Health Month in Transylvania County, the City of Brevard, and the town of Rosman. Whereas the mental health and well-being of our community members, especially our youth, are paramount to the vitality and resilience of Transylvania County, the City of Brevard, and the town of Rosman. And whereas recent tragic events, including student suicides, have underscored the urgent need for increased awareness, support, and action to address mental health challenges in our community. And whereas mental health is an integral component of overall health and wellness, and access to comprehensive mental health resources and support services is essential for all individuals to thrive. Whereas surrounding mental health concerns often prevent individuals from seeking the help and support they need, perpetuating cycles of suffering and isolation. Whereas by coming together as a community, we can break down barriers, foster empathy, and create a culture of understanding, compassion, and acceptance for those experiencing mental health challenges. And whereas May is recognized nationally as Mental Health Awareness Month, providing an opportunity to raise awareness, combat stigma, and promote mental health resources. Now therefore we, the undersigned leaders of Transylvania County, the city of Brevard, and the town of Rosman, do hereby proclaim May as Mental Health Month and call upon all residents to join us in commitment to prioritize mental health and well-being for ourselves, our families, and our community. We urge individuals to educate themselves and others about mental health and the importance of seeking help when needed. Foster supportive and inclusive environments where individuals feel safe to share their experiences and seek support without fear of judgment or stigma. Advocate for policies and initiatives that promote mental health awareness, access to care, and suicide prevention efforts. Encourage open and honest conversations about mental health, reducing the silence and shame that often surrounds these issues. Access available mental health resources and support services, and encourage others to do the same. Together, let us work tirelessly to create a community where mental health is valued, prioritized, and supported, and where every individual feels empowered to live their lives to the fullest. Signed by Jason Chappell, Chairman of the Transylvania County Board of Commissioners. Signed by Mayor Maureen Coppola and Mayor Brian Shelton. And I just want to say a couple of things, and I want to give TC Strong a minute to say things. One, we are wearing green. Most of us are wearing green. Many of us here are wearing green. Because green is the color of mental health. And if you have been downtown recently at night, what have you noticed about City Hall? Has anybody noticed anything? Green lights. It's lit up green. So that is, again, to just raise that awareness of mental health. So we have lit up City Hall. We are, our joint proclamation, we are wearing green in support. And I think tomorrow we're going to have a very exciting event happening downtown also. But I'm going to turn it over for TC Strong to say a few words.
Awesome. I wrote my thoughts down because if given the opportunity to talk about mental health, I could ramble on for a very long time, but I was told a minute-ish. So while TC Strong thinks mental health awareness is a worthy conversation every month, we enthusiastically take the opportunity in May to educate and expand our collective language around mental health in an effort to destigmatize, to connect folks with resources both locally and virtually, and to elevate the faces and safe spaces who advocate for mental health. We are excited and grateful for this joint proclamation and support from our local leadership to turn Transylvania green for Mental Health Awareness Month. We truly are better together. We are wearing green. You can wear green all month. If green's not your color, we also have buttons. Happy to chat. Basically, all this means is that you would be open and inviting to a conversation with when you're wearing this button or you're seeing someone else wear the button. We have yard signs that you can put in your yard and write messages on. If you've been around the block for a minute, you know that TC Strong kind of first gained visibility with yard signs 2.5 years ago. Some of those still exist around the community. And this time you get an opportunity to put your own words out there to encourage hope for Transylvania County. And then tomorrow,
we are going to install a piece of art in Clemson Plaza, and it's going to be an interactive art piece where we're inviting community members to come together and weave their hope into our, what we're calling the Hope Wall. So that will be available tomorrow at 3:30 in Clemson Plaza. You can come by, write a message of hope, and weave it into the wall.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you, Mayor Coppola, and all of our community for action, purpose, and hope.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, TC Strong, for everything that you do. Thank you so much. All right, and I have one last proclamation. I would like to ask our city clerk to please come forward. Hi, this is proclamation number 2024, TAP 10. The 55th Annual Professional Municipal Clerks Week, May 5th through May 11th. So it's actually right now. Right now. Whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world. And whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants. Whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels. Whereas professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. Whereas the professional municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community. Whereas professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the professional municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meeting of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. Whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the professional municipal clerk. Now therefore, I, Maureen Koploff, Mayor of the City of Brevard, do recognize the week of May 5th through May 11th, 2024, as Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our professional municipal clerk, Denise Hodgson, and to all professional municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and the exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. And I just want to personally say thank you to Denise. If you ever notice, anytime I'm like making a mistake up here, Denise is tactfully telling me what I've just done wrong. I've just messed up the proceedings, or I've missed something, or I've forgotten something. But she keeps us in line, she keeps us following the rules, but she is also a tremendous resource for all of you. And I don't know how much time she spent, but it's quite a lot, answering the public's questions, getting input when people want information on what happened 5 years ago at a city council meeting. They go to Denise. I mean, she is the wealth of knowledge all about the city. And I also want to point out that if you have not seen today's Transylvania Times, take a look at the front page, because Denise is featured on the front page and is actually the Transylvania of the week. Thank you, John. Pennsylvania, I couldn't remember it was week or month. But yes, so how appropriate that she is there. And I also just want to mention that, and I had to write this down because I never get it right, Denise just graduated from the University of North Carolina School of Government's Municipal and County Administration course. So she has indeed been refining her skills and knowledge to make sure that Brevard gives the very best service to both the elected officials and to the public. So on behalf of everybody sitting up here, I know they all join me in saying, thank you, Denise. We couldn't do it without you. All right, that was the last proclamation. And we're going to move on to special presentations.
Becky, can you make sure, is that on?
It is not. All right, and our first special presentation is on personnel policy revisions. And I believe our HR Director, Kelly Craig, is going to be presenting this.
Mayor, while she's coming up, I'll make a few introductory remarks. The first is to say that all the changes that she's going to review today have been referred to the council by the HR, Finance, and Citizens Appointment Committee. And also, we intentionally put these alongside the budget because sometimes they have a budgetary impact, and so we think it's important for them to run in parallel. A couple of the changes this year will have a nominal impact on the budget, and so it's really not as important as it usually is, but we'd like to keep these parallel for that reason. But anyway, I'll turn it to Kelly and have her go over the changes to the personnel policy.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. As the city manager indicated, this is an annual process that we've started doing to make sure the policy is current, and to identify any areas where we can, make policy changes to continue to make our workforce competitive, and ensure that our benefits and things that we do for our employees are top-notch. So this year, there are just 3 changes that we have recommended in the personnel policy. These have all gone to the HR Finance Committee, and they have endorsed these changes. The first one is we have on-call pay. Right now, employees that serve on-call hours in both Public Works and the Police Department are paid 90 cents an hour for those hours that they're on call. I don't know that this rate has ever changed. I'm not real sure. I know it's been that way since at least 2014. So we are proposing increasing that rate to $2 per hour. And again, that's just for the hours after hours where they're on call and may have to respond. The second proposed item that we're including is a floating holiday. It was brought up by council at a previous meeting about President's Day. And after reviewing that and looking at options of what other local governments do, we identified that the floating holiday might be a better option for us that allows the employees flexibility to use that day on a day that's meaningful for their choice. That also prevents us from closing City Hall down for another day and not having access to the public. So employees could then have that flexibility. The final revision that we're recommending is a revision to the paid parental leave policy. Last year, council approved that policy addition, which grants 6 weeks of paid leave to individuals who have had the birth, adoption, or fostering of a child. During this last year, I've had the pleasure of awarding that paid leave to an employee, but I've also had the displeasure of telling newer employees that they weren't eligible because the policy as initially written said you had to be employed for a year in order to be eligible. So I did some researching and came up with a recommendation to grant a prorated leave amount for newer employees. So if you've been employed at least 30 days but less than 6 months, you would get 2 weeks of paid parental leave. If you're between 6 months and a year, you'd be eligible for 4 weeks of paid parental leave. And again, if you've been here for a year or more, you would get the full 6 weeks of paid parental leave. So those are the policy recommendations that we're making. The only fiscal impact is related to the on-call pay increase. The others really don't have any sort of budgetary impact. In addition to these policy recommendations, you'll find in the proposed budget some other HR-related items that I'll highlight for you, and then I'll answer any questions you may have about these recommendations. So in the budget is a cost of living increase for all employees of 3.25%. So that would adjust both our starting pay as well as employees' current rates. We're also recommending a change to part-time firefighter wages. We've been working on this, as you know, over the last few years. This will be the final step in getting those employees to a living wage. So our minimum for firefighters part-time will be $16.40 an hour, which is what the regional living wage is currently. And the final piece that's included in the budget is taking the 401k contribution for general employees from a 3% match, which is what we're currently doing, to a 401k contribution of 4% for all general employees. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the policy or the other recommendations that we're making.
Okay, council, do we have any questions? Mr. Baker?
Just one question on the on-call pay, and this may be in the minutes of the committee, but did we compare that? It seems like a pretty easy thing to compare to surrounding cities. So did we look at other cities?
We looked across the state. Again, it really varies what others are doing. What I found somewhat common was people doing like an hour's worth of pay for so many hours that they're on call, which seemed inequitable to me. But others, you know, will stick with that on-call pay at a flat rate. And so when I calculated out that hourly rate that they were paying for an average employee to an on-call base rate, it came out to about that $2 an hour.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Daniel?
I have no questions.
Mr. Morrow?
Thank you.
Ms. Holder?
Thank you. When they get a call, does their pay go to the required standard for that position?
Yes, they're paid
Okay.
for a minimum of 2 hours
Correct.
when they're called in, or their actual hours worked at the regular hourly rate.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Wise?
No questions.
Thank you, Ms. Craig.
Thank you.
All right, our next special presentation is our FY 2025 recommended budget presentation, FY 2024 supplemental spending plan, and setting the date for the public hearing. And our city manager, Wilson Hooper, will be presenting the proposed budget.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Hope it's okay if I stand up here. That way I can see the council a little bit better than I can if I'm over there. And also, since I think this is probably one of the more important presentations that you'll hear this year, I want the folks in the audience and the viewers online to be able to hear and see as best they can as well. Before I start, I just want to thank you, council, for being engaged and thoughtful throughout the budget building process so far. These are so much harder to do when you don't have an engaged board like you all, and so I just want to send my thanks to you. I also want to send my thanks to all my colleagues who've helped put this recommendation together, but particularly Dean, raise your hand. Alex, raise your hand. And Becky, raise your hand. Those three in particular have been a great help putting this document together. So here's a summary of what I'm going to go over here over the next 45 minutes. And yes, friends, it's going to take that long because there's a lot of stuff to go over. I won't dwell on this slide very much. Instead, I'll go straight to why I'm here. And the reason why is because both the Brevard Code of Ordinances and the North Carolina General Statutes require me to. Local governments must have their manager, their budget officer, which in our case is me, the manager, present their budget by the 1st of June so that there's enough time for it to be talked about in the public and deliberated amongst the elected board by the end of the fiscal year on June 30th. So we're actually a month ahead of schedule. For those who are interested about the details of municipal budgeting in North Carolina, I would encourage you to read this general statute, 159.7. It's essentially pages and pages of the guardrails that are established by our parent government, which is the state of North Carolina, that govern pretty much all our financial matters as a local government. There are a few provisions of that statute that require transparency activities, including this presentation, making the budget available for viewing at City Hall and at the local library, publishing a notice of public hearing in the newspaper and holding that public hearing. But we're going to go above and beyond and do a few more things. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to publish a comprehensive budget document, and Gary, if you'll hold yours up right there, that we distributed to each of the council members today. Thank you. If you scan this code, viewers and guests that's on the screen, it'll take you to all the same information that we presented to the council in that notebook. And that's more information than I'm going to be able to go over today, so I would encourage you to read that. The reason why I say we're going above and beyond by presenting that notebook is because we're not really required to do that. That's a voluntary thing that we think is important for transparency's sake, and also for our council members to make wise decisions, but mainly so that the sun can shine on the budget that we put together here. building a budget is hard work. And if council, you've felt that staff and I have been a little harder to get in touch with over the last few weeks, it's because we've been deep in the weeds putting that document together. But even though it's occupied most of our time over the last few weeks, we actually started working on it in December. And so on the left there, you'll see what I consider to be the important milestone dates of the budget season. And on the right, you'll see the comprehensive calendar that staff used to schedule our work over the last few months. If you noticed on that last slide, council didn't even appear until the fourth milestone date, which was the key strategic, this priority setting retreat in February. And it was at that retreat that council set the 7 goals that are on the right and 20 related key strategic actions that aren't listed on the screen but are listed in the notebook. Those priorities were refined by the council at the April 1st meeting, reaffirmed by the council at the April 12th budget workshop, and they are the filter through which all financial requests are filtered. The second filter that staff uses when we're evaluating financial resources requests is the club, which was approved by council in March 2023. And although that's mainly a land use policy document, there are some other important policy recommendations in there. And so we look to it for guidance, for direction from council when we are putting our recommendation together. But that February retreat, the most important step in the process, in my opinion, because without it, without that direction from council, staff has no idea how we should focus the city's resources. And so the budget development process doesn't really start until that retreat is held. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the meat and potatoes of my budget, or of my presentation on the budget. The 6 things listed here, do I have 6? Well, 7 things listed here, are, in my opinion, the most notable parts of the budget. These are the headline makers, so to speak. And so I'm going to spend the rest of my time focusing on these. That means I'm going to not go over some of the detail that's important to the budget, but that detail is contained in the notebook, so that's why I encourage folks to read that notebook. I'm going to focus on these because I think these are probably the most notable. But one thing that's not listed on here that I think is notable is the fact that in this budget, all services are either maintained or enhanced. There are no steps back in this budget. Despite the slowing economy, despite the austerity that I think is on the horizon, this budget does not take any steps back in terms of our levels of service. Okay, so here's a quick summary of what it contains. Total, the budget comes in at about $26.5 million. And you can see in the top left corner how that's divided between the 4 main funds that make up our budget. Overall, it's up 7% compared to last year. And in a few minutes, we'll go over some of the reasons why it's higher. But if you take out some of the proposed increases that I'm going to review here shortly, it's still 4.5% higher than last year. And that's because the cost of doing business has gone up. And so no matter what we do, if we maintain our services, it's going to grow by a few percentage points every year. The budget is funded by a variety of revenue sources, most of which, particularly property tax, sales tax, and interest income, have grown slightly year over year, but not a lot. And all their growth is pretty much automatically swallowed up by that growth in cost that I just mentioned. So to make the budget work, and particularly to fund the priorities that you all have listed, we need to have either new or enhanced revenue sources. Therefore, I'm recommending the following things, and these are the last 6 bullets or so in the bottom left corner. A 2% increase to our millage rate or property tax rate from 48 to 50 cents. Small increases in our solid waste and sanitation fees. A new stormwater fee, which I'll go over a little bit later. A new high-strength waste surcharge for commercial and institutional utility customers. And then our typical 4% increase to the general utility consumption fee. And then there'll be a couple of other small fee changes that you'll see in the budget, including some increases to fees that planning charges upstairs, the cost of hiring an off-duty police officer, the cost of doing special collections. But those are minor. The most significant ones are the first few mentioned on this list. Now, I confess, when you list them all together like that, it sounds like they're going to be pretty burdensome. But a little bit later, I'm going to go over some examples of the impact that these fees will have on various types of customers. And I think you'll see that the impact is actually quite modest on most folks. All right. So going first into the general fund. The general fund is home to what people consider to be traditional government services like police, public works, planning, recreation, finance, administration, and so forth. In most cases, fire is a general fund service, but it's different for us here for reasons I'll explain a little later. And so I wanted to show in this slide the categories that we spend our general fund dollars on. And as is typical, public safety, the number one most expensive service we provide. Public works comes in close second. General government seems high, but you got to remember that general government, administration, finance, HR, and so forth, serves not only those general fund functions, but also our enterprise functions. So that's the admin, that's the finance, that's the HR, and so forth, or the water sewer fund as well. Recreation and culture, $468,000, and on down the list. You'll note that my budget recommendation includes $0.015, down from 2 pennies last year, for housing. That equates to a $198,000 contribution to the Housing Trust Fund. All right. As I've mentioned on a number of occasions before, the economics of sanitation has changed. I think when I've mentioned this before, I might have said is changing. Well, I can confidently say now that it has changed. It's changed so much that, in my opinion, I don't think it can be a standalone enterprise anymore. I.e., if we paid for our sanitation services with fees alone, the fees would probably have to be twice as high as they are now. And so instead of doing that, I'm recommending that we bring this service back home to the general fund so that it can be subsidized by the general fund's more diverse set of revenues. That said, even though we're going to bring it back into the general fund and subsidize it, I think that we need to reconsider the fees because if we don't, that fund, which is already underwater, is going to drown the whole general fund with it. And so we need to reconsider those fees. So I'm proposing a modest $1 a month increase to residential and small commercial collection fees from $20 to $21. And I'm proposing a more significant increase in the commercial dumpster fees from $20 a month to $100 a month. And I'll explain why, because that's a big increase that I think needs some explanation. For that $20, we pick up an 800-pound dumpster from participating businesses 8 times a month. So do a little bit of math, and that equates to $2.50 per collection. To dump those 800 pounds at the Transylvania County landfill with the current tipping fees is $24.80. So as soon as we pick up that trash can, we have already lost $22. All right? And that's without even factoring in the cost of the manpower, the gas, the wear and tear on the truck, etc. Now, I confess there is a public benefit to having subsidized refuse collection. If you don't want trash on the sides of the road or in the creek, you need to make sure that your trash collection is frequent and economical for people to use. But with that said, the primary beneficiary is still the user of the service, and I think it's only fair that they bear a more significant percentage of the cost. Under my proposal, the city will go from losing nearly $40 each time we collect to only $30. So we'll still be subsidizing it with tax dollars, but it won't be losing as much money as before. And our service will still be cheaper than that provided by private haulers. All right, moving on to the fire fund. As I said, traditionally this is a general fund thing, but in our case, it's a discrete fund because here in Transylvania County, Brevard Fire Department is jointly funded between us and Transylvania County. The agreement that we have with them divides the cost 55% to us and 45% to them. But on my slide here, I say that it's split up 62 to 38, and I'll explain why. My proposal includes adding 3 new full-time firefighter positions at a cost of $264,000. So that 2-cent tax increase that I mentioned earlier will go exclusively to hiring 3 new full-time firefighters and enhancing our fire service. And in a minute, I'm going to ask Captain Adam Huey from the Brevard Fire Department to come up and share a few words about why this is important and how it will affect our service. But before he does, just want to go over these other slides. Their budget also includes a number of significant capital expenses and the first payments on capital expenses made in previous years. And then, as Kelly said, part-time firefighter pay up to $16.40 from $15 to meet our area's living wage. We hope that with the 3 new firefighters, we won't have to use quite as many part-time employees, which I think is an important thing for the efficiency and effectiveness of our fire department because it's harder to find part-time folks these days. And so the more we can shift our burden onto full-time employees, the easier it will be to maintain a consistent staffing level. So, Adam, if you wouldn't mind.
Make sure I can get in here where you can hear me. Thank you for letting me get up here and talk. Some of the stuff that if you see in the packet, it talks about our response from last year in 2023. We went to 2,513 incidents in the year. Now, several years ago, before we had full-time staff, doing medical response, we were averaging about 800 calls a year. So there's been a large increase in that. Most of the time, that's averaging about 8 to 14 calls a day. So one of the biggest hurdles that we're experiencing right now is, let's say that it's just one full-time person, part-time's there, and we're having these concurrent and overlapping incidents that come in. So a lot of times, one call, one emergency will come in, and a few minutes later, another additional emergency will come in. And we're just having to stack these calls or do the best that we can to get to them. But since last year, since 2022, it's been a 126% increase. So 850 of the calls in 2023 were overlapping calls, meaning we were on one call and another call was coming in. And that can range from medical to fire alarms to vehicle accidents, fires, and everything else. Even with the increase, we've still been able to maintain a average of 5 minutes and 30-second response to the scene. So from time of dispatch until the time the truck gets there, 5 minutes and 30 seconds. The national standard for that is 5 minutes and 20 seconds. So we are maintaining right there where we need to be. But to maintain that adequate response and resources and the level of professional service for our citizens, we are requesting to get 3 more additional full-time firefighters. After midnight, that puts 2 firefighters on duty. We don't have to try to find somebody to cover us part-time, or if somebody can't, or a part-timer can come in after hours to help us after midnight. So that's 2 people, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 366 days this year, as Tom was talking about. But that will put us at a total of 7 full-time firefighters, including those part-time staff that'll come in and help us also. Having that extra person gives us the opportunity to be able to split and get another vehicle. And let's say a full-time firefighter and a part-time firefighter can go to one call, and then another full-time firefighter or part-time firefighter can go to the other call, or 2 part-time firefighters, and so on and so forth. So we can actually split up our resources, provide a better service and a quicker service. Let's see. Other than that, we also, on top of the call volume, we went to, and you can see in the fund package, but we went to the schools. We also went to a couple different centers. We talked to about, on average, 3,000 students between preschool age and 5th grade. We also talked to 1,000 adults. That includes senior citizens as well. Doing fire safety presentations, talking about different things for safety. We also are a permanent car seat check station, so we installed approximately 200 car seats last year alone. It's the only place for somebody to come to get a car seat installed in Transylvania County. And then the other on top of the call volume is 48 special events where we do staff those for medical response and fire safety also. Do you guys have any questions?
Council, any questions? Anybody?
Just a comment. What I think it also does is the 2 in and 2 out rule for OSHA. Requires 2 in and 2 out. And I think that's very, very important.
Yeah, Mr. Moore brings a good point. There's a lot of safety factor in that, even on a medical call, especially nowadays. Having 2 people there as a safety team of performing at that medical call, but also being able to protect each other and keeping eyes everywhere, because due to medical reasons, people can change and it can become dangerous. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. So, as I mentioned earlier, this will change the split with the county from 55-45 to 62-38, because this proposal will establish a service level that's higher than their policy to fund. The county's policy is to fund up to a certain service level, and this will put us above that. And so their position at the moment, at least, is to only contribute their normal 45%, which means this enhancement will be funded entirely, if it's approved by you all, will be funded entirely by taxpayers of the city of Brevard, but it will benefit some county residents, namely the residents of the Sylvan Valley 2 Fire District who we serve. All right, moving on. This is a new proposal, or a new fund that I'm proposing. And I can think of no more powerful demonstration of its need than yesterday's rain. City crews have spent most of today dealing with the aftermath of yesterday's storm, and I imagine many citizens who experienced flooding, standing water in their yard, erosion in their yards, subsidence in their yards, have been dealing with its aftermath today as well. More information on this in pages 128 and 129 of your notebook. So folks who clicked on the QR code and are following along in the notebook, those are the pages. The stormwater fund that I'm proposing would establish a dedicated funding source to help us systematically go in and update and enhance our stormwater conveyance system. And that's a lot of different things. That's the grates you see in the curbing, but it's also the pipes that are running underground, the ditches and streams that those pipes run into, the culverts over roads that those streams run through. It's a lot of different things, and they are starting to fail. And one of the things that I think is worth mentioning is that something that I think everyone in this room already knows, and that is we are the wettest county in the entire state of North Carolina. And so it makes sense for us to have a stormwater conveyance system that's in a good state of repair. As it says on this slide, the council dipped their toe into stormwater funding 17 years ago. At that time, a stormwater master plan was created. And over the past 17 years, a couple of those projects have been ticked off the box, including the Norton Creek Stream Bank restoration and a couple of other smaller projects. But by and large, the projects that were identified in that report have gone uncompleted. And the reason why is because even in 2007, they were $12 million. And so clearly this is not something that you can tackle ad hoc. There needs to be a dedicated funding source to fund this kind of thing. And the good news is that we have models nearby, because some of our neighboring municipalities, including Laurel Park, Hendersonville, Black Mountain, and larger nearby municipalities like Asheville, are required to have programs like these by virtue of the fact that they're in more urbanized counties. Now, we're not required to have one yet, but we may be one of these days. And I think when you're in a county as wet as us, it makes sense to have one anyway. And so my next slide is going to try to illustrate the challenge in front of us. On the left there is a map of every parcel within the city limits that has impervious surface on it. Now, impervious surface is sort of the standard thing that stormwater programs use to calculate their rates, because impervious surface is the main contributor to the problem. It prevents water from absorbing into the ground like it's supposed to do naturally, and it gives it speed and acceleration so that when it does go into that piece of infrastructure that's designed to carry it away, it does so with destructive force. And so it wears away the pipes, it erodes the stream banks. And so impervious surface is the biggest challenge to effective stormwater management. But it's a fact of life, so you have to deal with it. But again, on the left, all the properties with impervious surface, and the dark red there are properties that have more than 4,400 square feet of impervious surface. Now, 4,400 square feet is about 1.5 times the size of the average house's footprint. So all those properties have at least a house and a half of impervious surface on them. And then the map on the right are the properties we've identified that have no appreciable impervious surface. And I just wanted to put these things up to show the distinction and about how much impervious surface we have compared to pervious surface. Now, I confess that these are imperfect illustrations because what they don't show is how much impervious surface is on each of those properties. Right there in the middle, we can see Brevard College's big parcel. You know, they've got 1 million square feet of impervious surface on their campus between their rooftops and their parking lots, but they've probably also got 1 million or more square feet of grass and creeks and other things that help accept that water. So I can't illustrate that today, but I just wanted to show you these anyway. All right, we talked about this briefly at the retreat, and at the time, the feedback y'all gave me was that you wanted to consider a rate model that put the burden on the folks who contributed the most to the problem. At the retreat, in order to initiate conversation, I brought a flat rate model where everyone, regardless of impervious surface, would pay the same nominal monthly fee, kind of like they do in Laurel Park there at the bottom. But you all sent me back to reconsider because you didn't think it was fair that a property with 7,000 square feet of impervious surface was paying the same amount as Ingles or Walmart, who have acres and acres and acres of impervious surface. So that's what I've done. I've brought back a couple of options here. My recommended option is in yellow. And as you can see, the folks with the least impervious surface pay the least. The folks with a moderate amount in the middle pay a modest amount, and the folks with the highest amount pay the most. And so I'll be quiet for a minute and let you take a look at that proposal there. 3 tiers, pink, green, and blue, based only on impervious surface, not on any other factor like zoning category or property type, only on impervious surface. And then those last 3 lines there show the rate models of some of our neighbors. During the budget workshop, we even talked about setting the rate for residential properties, so the properties that would fall in Tier 1, the pink tier, as low as $2.50 a month. We can do that, but I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that 3,000 out of the 3,600 or so properties that this would impact fall within that category. And so if that number is too low, we won't make enough money to do anything. I think that in order for us to initiate an effective stormwater management program, we need in the neighborhood of $250,000 of revenue a year, and an ultra-low rate for Tier 1 won't get us anywhere near that. And so that's why I'm recommending the yellow line, which I think is a pretty good compromise rate model. I hope that at the end of my presentation, the council will offer some feedback on this, because this was something we didn't get to spend a lot of time on at the retreat. If there's interest in investigating a model that's not on here, staff and I can do that, and we'll add that as an addendum to my recommended document for consideration here in the weeks to come. Oh, and then one final fact that I missed here is that Tier 1, like I said, that is all properties with less than 7,000 impervious square feet of impervious surface. And according to our estimations, that will cover over 90% of houses in Brevard. I would say probably closer to 95%. And so there's only a small percentage of residential properties who would fall in Tier 2. And so the homeowner would get the most relief under that scheme. All right, moving on to the Water Sewer Fund. The Water Sewer Fund is an enterprise fund meant to be funded exclusively with the rate collections that it collects. And it's our only truly self-sustaining enterprise fund. In fact, if it were a business, we'd be making a profit this year. But I think we need to continue on with the regular 4% rate increases and with the high-strength waste surcharge that I'm about to describe for a couple reasons. The main one being that over the last few years, most of our capital expenses have been funded with free money from the federal government and the state in the form of ARPA. And that money is about to, pardon the pun, dry up. The projects that are on the books now that are funded with ARPA will be the last. And in the future, all our capital needs are either going to need to be funded with earmarks, which we know are hit or miss and you don't always get those, or with our own money. And so I think we need to look ahead and start socking money away for those future capital expenses. The biggest one, as we know, is the wastewater treatment plant replacement. So I'm asking you all, despite the fact that we're making profit in this fund this year, to stay disciplined and to let us move forward with my rate recommendations, because we need to plan for the future and not for the current in this fund. I also propose that we exercise some discipline in this fund by enhancing our maintenance function. You might notice something a little bit different on the bottom right-hand table. Last year, that would have said water treatment, wastewater treatment, water distribution, and wastewater collection. Well, I'm recommending that we combine water distribution and wastewater collection into a new budgetary unit called water sewer maintenance that provides maintenance to all of those things. The underground distribution pipes, the underground collection pipes, and the maintenance at the two treatment facilities. And the reason why I think it's important to enhance this is because there's no better way to prolong the life of your expensive assets than to maintain them fastidiously. You guys might not know this, but I'm a car guy. I love reading Motor Trend, Car and Driver, all those different things. And, you know, I analogize this to car ownership. Your car's going to last longer if you regularly change your oil and regularly inflate your tires. And if you just do those things ad hoc or when your check engine light comes on, your car's not going to last as long. And that's kind of what we've been doing recently. We've been able to maintain and enhance our utility infrastructure adequately, but I'd like to enhance our maintenance program so that we can prolong the life of our assets. And so I recommend we do that by combining those two divisions and adding a position to the water sewer maintenance division to put together a better maintenance program for our assets. And I'll ask Public Works Director Wesley Shook to come up and talk a little bit about what that will look like.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Yeah, what he's talking about is we're gonna add one more to the Utilities Department. One I run into right now is on recycle weeks, I'm having to lose sometimes 2, 3 guys. So it's not just, so as it's been so far, we've not just been a utility department, we built multi-use paths, gardens, dog parks. It's kind of been neglected some on the utility side. So we get more in that department, I could get them trained. And it's really important to have those men trained. It's not, I can't just pull anybody in and have them do that. They've got to go to school. So I think in the future to accomplish what we're looking to is get them in and get them trained, get them in school. Right now I have 7 people in utilities, well, 9 now that we took over the lift stations. But to do this accurately, we're going to need more help. Any questions or?
Council? Any council member have a question? No? Council? No? Thank you, Wesley.
Thank you.
I just want to supplement what he said by telling y'all that one of the ways we considered putting together a more regular maintenance program for our lift stations that he alluded to was by hiring an outside firm to do it for us. And we discovered quite quickly that that was an expensive endeavor, and that, as with most things, we can do it more economically in-house if we have the appropriate resources, and that's what this proposal is about. Okay. I just wanted to show this slide to let folks know that despite that news, we're still hard at work updating our utility infrastructure. This table shows every project that we're paying debt service on right now. So we've financed through various financing sources quite a few capital projects in our utility fund. And each one of these lines represents one of those projects. So don't think that we are neglecting our system. All right. On to the next part. How do we set ourselves up for success in the future? Well, the first way is making sure that we don't spend our rate collections, our general rate collections that everyone pays, on costs that are attributable to only a few customers. And so, in order to respond to that, I am recommending that we implement a high-strength waste surcharge that charges the cost of treating high-strength waste, so really dirty stuff, it's all dirty, but the dirtiest of the dirty stuff, to the folks who produce it. And this year, staff did a little analysis, and we discovered that $160,000 of our cost of treatment is attributable to folks who dump high-strength waste down the drain. And so I think it's only fair that their rate reflect the extra expense that they cause for the system. And just to go back one step for our purposes, when I say high-strength waste, I am referring to waste that includes high levels of BOD and TSS. BOD is biological oxygen demand, so essentially organic waste. And TSS means total suspended solids, which is what it sounds, solids that are in the wastewater. And those things tax our treatment system, and as I said, cost $160,000 extra dollars by our calculations to treat. At the moment, our rates, only our industrial rates, factor in the cost of treating high-strength waste. Our commercial, institutional, and residential rates, which by the way are all the same, don't factor that cost in. And yet I think we can all agree that a small brewery or a medical facility, their waste is stronger than the waste that our household produces.
Wilson, I'm sorry.
Yes.
What page are you on now?
I'm on page, well, the information that I'm summarizing is on page 104 through 107. You know, those kinds of customers, even though they pay the same as you and me, they're dumping dirtier stuff down the drain. And so this proposal would add an additional surcharge to their utility bill to make up for the extra costs that their waste is causing. And this rate proposal is modeled after a similar program in Bend, Oregon, that categorizes all commercial and institutional customers into a category based on the strength of their waste. And viewers, I'm sorry, it's probably hard to see that table there in the bottom right, but council, if you look on those pages that I just mentioned in your package, you should be able to make out what that chart says. But each customer is categorized into a category based on the strength of their waste, and then charged a fee listed in the top right table based on how many gallons of that waste they send into the system. And in this case, it would yield about by our calculations, it would yield about $160,000 of revenue over the course of a full year. But we would only charge this for 9 months out of FY25 because it's going to take us a couple months to get our billing system updated and do some community outreach before we implement this charge. And I just want to say before I move on that, in council's booklet, there is a brief description of the what I'm calling the ops down procedure. So for example, if we categorize you into the super high category, but you feel that, no, my waste does not have over 2,000 milligrams per liter of BOD, and you can prove it to me, we'll move you down to the category where you belong. But it shifts the burden onto you. You've got to prove it to us that you belong in a lower category because we've done our research and we have found that businesses like you most of the time produce waste of this strength, and so we've categorized you into that particular category. And in a few slides, I'll show you what this fee would equate to in terms of raw dollars for various types of businesses. But before I do, I want to go over the table here in front of you. This is a table that shows the existing balances of our 6 biggest reserve funds. Why am I showing you this? Well, because both my FY25 recommendation and my FY24 supplemental spending plan use some of these dollars. I don't think we can fund all your priorities with FY25 dollars alone. I think we've got to reach into our piggy bank in order to continue funding some of these projects. We saw this table before at the budget workshop, but there is a couple changes that I want to point out. The first is there in the middle, Funds 78 and 83, Multi-Use Path and Downtown Master Plan Fund. During the workshop, neither of those funds were endowed with extra dollars in the new year, but I've since updated that to endow the Multi-Use Path with $25,000 and with the Downtown Master Plan Fund with $33,000. The Multi-Use Path column on the second column from the right only shows a $13,000 contribution, but that's because that's a net contribution. On the next slide, I'm going to recommend that we spend a little bit of that $25,000 contribution on a trail-related project. So a net contribution of 13 for that fund. And of course, it's got a pretty healthy balance so that we can keep our trail-related activities going again in the new year. All right, well, why was that chart important to show? Because I'm going to recommend that we spend some of that money on some projects that are important to you and that are important to me, but that I don't think we can afford to insert into the ordinary FY25 budget. This is what's referred to in the table of contents as the FY24 supplemental spending plan. And without this, I don't think the budget can work. Either we don't do these projects, or we have to cut some other things in order to afford these projects in FY25. So anyway, this is the recommendation that I'm making. City Hall reconfiguration, upfits to 132 Commerce Street, internal email upgrade. That was the one that was originally budgeted for FY25, but that we found out we were able to move up and fund in FY24. And so we'll take the money that was budgeted for that in FY25 and a little bit from another source and divide it up between 78 and 83. The farmer's market contribution that you all directed me to put back in at the workshop will come from FY24 funds. And I asked Leslie if that was okay, if she got that before the end of the June 30th fiscal year, and she said it was fine. She also revised their request down a little bit from 20,000 to 18,200, and so I appreciate her flexibility. Fourth line from the bottom, I'm recommending that we spend approximately $43,000 to perform some of the projects that were in the heart of Brevard's downtown walkability study. Essentially, every page of that study that identified bricks or concrete-related projects, things that our public works staff can do. They're experts in brick and concrete, and with in-house resources, we think that we can perform most, if not all, of those brick and concrete-related projects with around $43,000. It allocates $30,000 for the Probart Street traffic calming, all 3 phases, and it allocates $72,000, and this is one that you all have already approved for Phase 2 of the Norton Creek Stream Bank restoration. During the budget workshop, I had a couple more trail-related proposals on there, but the message I got from you all was that you wanted to tap the brakes on those and get some more community input on what the next steps should be with regard to the trail. But there was one important trail-related project that was time-sensitive, and so it's included on here, and that is our 5800 Trail Betterments Study, Phase 1. For those who aren't familiar with our lingo, what that is we will hire a professional engineering firm to review the state's blueprints for the Asheville Highway upgrade and make recommendations on how we can enhance them to make that upgrade function better for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other trail users. And if we can convince the state to include some of those enhancements into their plans, we think that that updated highway will integrate the Acosta Trail into the Estato Trail and beyond better than it's going to currently. But the state's only going to listen to folks who've got the experience and expertise in that field. We don't have any of those on staff, so we want to spend $12,000 and hire someone who's got that experience to be our advocate with them. And that concept, since our workshop, has been endorsed by both the Parks, Trails, Recreation Committee and the Acoustic Trail Advisory Committee. All right, moving on. These next 4 slides are the ones I think that you've been waiting to see. These are the ones that are going to show the impacts of the various tax and fee increases on a sampling of our tax and rate payers. Now, I got to put a disclaimer in there. The disclaimer is that these are just examples. Everyone's circumstances are going to be a little bit different. It all depends on what your property value is, how many gallons of water you use, how much impervious surface you have, etc. So these are just examples. And I think what you'll see here over the next few slides is that these increases aren't as burdensome as they might seem. So we'll start off with property tax increase, its effects on properties of various assessed values, the cost of our 4% utility increase on users who use 2, 4, 6,000 gallons, and so forth. Okay, next. Here's the impact of all the increases on 3 different types of residential properties. So that is the tax increase, the garbage rate increase, the utility increase, the stormwater increase. Note that this table assumes that it's the same payer paying for all of those things. And that's not always the case. A renter, for example, is not going to pay the property tax increase. They're just going to pay the utility increase. But assuming that it's all the same payer, this is what the effect would be on a tax and rate payer of various kinds. And in the interest of transparency and to show people that I'm not unsympathetic to the effect these increases are going to have on folks, that middle table is my situation. So that's my bill. I'm going to pay $145.70 more per year under this recommendation. Okay, moving on to commercial tax and rate payers. Again, council, this information is in your notebook if you're having trouble reading it. I've chosen a sample of different business types to show what the impact will be on various types of customers. Again, notice that not everyone pays every fee. So we'll start off with Ingalls up at the top. Their building's valued at $10.2 million, so they'll pay about $2,000 more in tax under this recommendation than they did last year. They don't use our waste collection, so they'll pay nothing there. Based on their utility consumption, they'd pay about a little less than $2,000 more per year. They would be charged a high-strength waste surcharge because, as you can imagine, with food prep and so forth that they have there, they would be sending some organic things down the drain. And so according to our scheme, they'd be a tier 3. And based on their 191,000 gallons per month of usage, they'd pay about $2,400 of high-strength waste surcharge. They'd pay $150 a month, so $1,800 a year in stormwater fees for their well over 250,000 square feet of impervious surface. So all told, Ingalls would pay $8,000 more to the city in FY25 than they did in FY24. And I don't think that's unreasonable for a building and facility of that size and value. I do want to point out a couple of outliers here, and these are concerning, I confess. Classic Laundry at the bottom. They wouldn't pay any additional tax because they lease that space. They don't use our dumpster service. They use a private provider, presumably. Based on the nature of their business, they're going to use a lot of water, but they've certainly already factored that into their business model. The thing that's going to hit them the most is that high-strength waste surcharge. Quite a significant impact on them because they dump both a lot of BOD and TSS straight down the drain. So they're the kind of company who it would make sense to sample their wastewater and see whether they truly emit that much BOD and TSS and seek an opt-down to another tier. And if they don't have such a filtration system, it would behoove them to get one. Because as you can see, the impact on them is going to be big. But there's ways that they can mitigate that impact. So here's another couple of examples. Transylvania Regional Hospital at the top. Hunters and gatherers, sort of as a representative of a downtown business. $226 more per year for them. And then Triangle Stop number 217 is the gas station down here at the end of Caldwell Street and Rosman Highway. So between those 7 examples, I think you got a pretty good sort of cross-section of businesses and what the impact is going to be on them. And as you can see, with the exception of those outliers, I don't think that increase is going to be unreasonable. Yeah, TR Hospital's tax bill is going to go up a lot, but that's because their assessment is high. Look how much their building is assessed at. That's how property tax works. Okay. Look, I'm nearly done. Y'all are probably happy about that. In conclusion, this budget, in my opinion, waters the seeds that the council has planted. Lauren, I think that was your expression last time, right? Okay. Hope it's okay if I borrow.
Sounds like a wise statement.
Enhances public safety services. It maintains our other core services. It sets us up for our long-term water and capital needs. It closes the gap on some of our money-losing services, and it does so all with a small additional burden to tax and ratepayers. So, as for the next steps tonight, I'm hoping that you all will share some thoughts and comments on this presentation. If there are any questions that staff and I can't answer today, or if y'all are just tired of listening to me and you want to wait and get your answers later on, staff and I will provide those in a follow-up document here in the days to come. If there are any recommended changes, staff and I will record those and publish those as an addendum to my recommendation so that they can be part of your menu of choices here over the next few weeks in preparation for the vote on June 3rd. And a month from now, on June 3rd, when this comes before you again for vote, we'll have my recommendation here and then your alternatives that you may offer here alongside one another so that it will be easy for you to choose one or the other at that time. So, thank you for tolerating me. That's all I've got for now, and I'll go back to my seat to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I think before we open this for discussion and questions, we will take a 10-minute break. Okay. We will reconvene and we will move into questions and discussion from council about the budget presentation. And we will start with Mr. Daniel.
I would say I have some concerns about the budget. I realize that, and I'm very happy that a lot of the increases in this budget are in support of our staff. I think that's important. It's obviously something that's been overlooked for some time, and it's about time that we fix that. I feel like, though, that some of the cuts that have been made don't necessarily reflect the will of the council or our citizens. And I think that some of these expenses that we have incurred, I would say, looking at the police move to Commerce Street has changed our budget more than I personally expected it to, which is, I understand why we did that, but at the same time, I think we could probably divert some of the money that we're spending on, instead of getting 2 police cars, perhaps we could get 1 police car and put that money back into the Esteto Trail multi-use fund. I think there's also, looking at page 80, I was wondering where on this is the recreation fund, item 1500, M&R buildings is increasing by $15,000. I'm trying to look at some of these items. Downtown planners is $20,400. If we're in a budget crunch, we need to be spending that kind of money on planners. So I think there are ways to trim, things that aren't quite as important to our infrastructure and our ongoing business of running the city, that would allow us to meet some of the other needs that I feel like we have. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Baker?
Sure, and I'm gonna start on the small stuff and maybe move to the bigger picture things. One of the things, obviously, well, first I want to commend Wilson and the staff. I think the stormwater, tackling stormwater and the issue of high-strength waste is certainly, those are complicated issues. They're not easy to tackle. And, I think you can tell how much effort was put into those 2 areas of the budget and trying to introduce those ideas for the city going forward, but do so with an eye towards fairness. And you can really tell, I think, in the budget with that. One big concern that I have, and Wilson, you mentioned it, is the particular impact on a business like Classic Laundry, which seems to have just an enormous impact. And I wonder if if there's a provision we can make to give them a little extra time for, if they're going to take the step of proving that their wastewater might be not quite as high strength as we think it is, that we give them a little extra time to make that assessment. And then also give them a little extra time if there is some sort of pretreatment that they're going to enact in order to lower their where they sit in the tiers, that we give them some extra time to implement that pre-treatment. Obviously, I work at a place that is, highly impacted or makes a big impact on the wastewater treatment plant, and we have been, Oscar Blues Brewery, and we have been paying a surcharge. We have also implemented pre-treatment, and as I've said a couple times, I'm just the marketing guy over there, but unfortunately I've learned more about pre-treatment than I care to. And I do know that it's pretty complicated and takes a long time to implement, so I think just giving them a little extra time might go a long way towards easing the burden of a policy which I think on the whole is really well written, but I think those little particular issues, I think we should try to make accommodations where we can. So I think going back to sort of the bigger picture, I think I find this is the third budget that I've been on council for, and I'm in a bit of a unique position. I think at this point in the budget process, the previous 2 years, I haven't had as many concerns with the budget as I do this year. And I don't think that's necessarily shouldn't be a knock on the staff. I think it's just where we are this year. The budget is complex, and we've got a lot of things that are impacting it. But there's two main areas where I think my concerns lie. And the first, I'll start with the issue at the fire department. Like it or not, we're in a partnership with the county on this. And, it makes sense for local governments to be able to partner on things like this. And frankly, I wish we could do it more often. But the subtext to all this is, frankly, the county's reputation and how they handle their budgets and versus how we handle our budgets. And, it's important, I think, to call that out when we're talking about increasing our services. But it's not just the services for the city's taxpayers. There are county taxpayers which are going to benefit from this increase in services as well. And I'm struck by a couple things that were said. The medical response addition, I believe that was a county requirement. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
So, that represents a huge increase in the number of calls that our department is responding to, and the county required us to make that change. 3,000 students, being educated, that's great, and we should be doing those things. But just judging by the numbers, I'm sure that some of those students are county students. Again, car seat safety. Of course, we should be doing that. It's great that we are doing that. But the fact that the city department is the only place where we perform that service means that we're providing that service for county residents as well. Now, again, we should be able to partner with our other local government here. But where we're down to here is that we're signing on for a tax increase for our city residents in order to boost services for not just them, but also the county. Now, I don't dispute the need, but I think the timing of this should be considered. And as it is, I'm not comfortable with moving forward with this budget and this tax increase and this increase in services in the fire department before we talk to our partner and really understand the impact long-term. And I've said this to a few folks, but if we pay for these 3 full-time positions in the fire department 100% from the city's budget, which right now it's 45, 55, you know, the county is not going to show up in 3 years and say, oh, you know those 3 firefighters that you paid for 3 years ago? We would love to pay for 45% of their salaries now. That's not going to happen. So this is a decision that we're making for a long time. I would argue forever. So before we do that, I really think we need to take a look at that contract. And this may be a year-long process, maybe longer than that, and negotiate that for the long term and talk about things like, you know, the medical response requirement and the impact that that has had on our call volume. You know, if we're truly in a partnership with the county, they should be understanding of that impact and where we would like to see the department go, and the services that it might provide for county residents going forward. So that was long-winded, but that was number one. That's my first concern. The second concern I have is where some of the major priorities that this council has set in the past, and not just this council, but previous councils as well. And I'm going to talk about housing and about the multi-use path. Now, last year was the very first year that we assigned funds for housing in any meaningful way, and that was 2 cents, so $264,000 a year. And while this budget assigns $198,000 a year, I'm struck by the fact that we're in our second year of addressing housing. We are already taking a step back from the funding that we're allocating towards it. And I don't think anybody would argue that the problem with housing has gotten better in the last year. And I also don't think that anybody on this council would agree that it is a lower priority than it was last year. We're also in the very middle of a real, tangible, promising project with our partners at DFI. So the idea of taking a step back in our support for housing is something that I personally just cannot stomach in this budget. And the second thing is the Esteto Trail, and you know, I've waxed poetic plenty on the path, and in many ways it's the reason that I'm in this seat to begin with. Not the sole reason, but it did inspire me to get involved in city dealings a few years back. And in my mind, this is not the year to take a step back from our financial support for the Esteto Trail. Yes, the Acosta Trail is a transformative project, but that is almost entirely funded by you know, 2 very large federal grants. And we get a reputation sometimes out there for, and this is completely unfair and false, but for doing things only for tourists. I think if anyone sat through the budget discussion today, they would argue against that. But if we're truly embarking on the Acosta Trail project as a project not just for our visitors, but for our citizens, then the Esteto Trail, the city's trail network, is the key to providing access to the Acosta Trail to our citizens. I mean, do we really want somebody who, you know, lives over by me on McMinn Avenue or over on Gallimore Road near the high school? Do we want them to load their bikes up or skateboards or strollers? Do we want to load that up into their car, drive over to a trailhead somewhere, and then unload in order to access the Acosta Trail? No, like the citizens that live here should be able to access the trail directly from their home. I think that is the dream that we've all been talking about for years now. So to reduce our funding from the multi-use path fund from 1 cent of the tax rate at $132,000 down to $25,000 a year, again, is just something that I don't think is in our strategic best interest, given the projects that we have going on. And frankly, I think it is, contrary to the will of many, many councils' opinions before us. The resolution that was passed in 2018 that we would finish the multi-use path in 3 years was certainly ambitious, and we've missed that goal, but I maintain that we should continue along the path, sorry for the pun, of completing that for our citizens in time for them to enjoy the Acosta Trail once it is built. Now, I agree with Councilman Daniel that, there's another subtext to the budget, which is, the expenditures, the increase in expenditures that we're experiencing is in large part in the police department. And, the move to Commerce Street is, it's frankly, it's about $250,000 a year, I think, in increased expense. And I don't think any of us are arguing whether that was important or not, or whether we support it. I think we absolutely do. But I think we do need to find a way to balance out the priorities of the council that have existed in sometimes for over 20 years in the case of the Esteto Trail, and some of these new issues that we need to deal with. And sometimes there does need to be a give and a take between departments within the city and projects that we have. And certainly if there are ways when we can, given how much money we are dedicating to supporting the employees in the police department now, if there are ways that we can offset that with or put off the purchase of the patrol cars in order to fund the priorities that have been around for a long time, then I think I would be supportive of that.
Anything else, Mr. Baker?
That is it.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Wise.
First off, as you all can see, this is a really complicated process, and as my first time kind of wading into it, everyone at the city has been immensely helpful, so I really appreciate that. I don't want to belabor this too much, but I think there's been a lot of great progress towards the goals we had talked about during our budget retreat. But I also have some concerns, and we've heard most of them tonight already from our previous two council members. But I'll take it a little bit further with the fire. I do not believe we're in a partnership with the county with this current agreement. 62 to 38 split for the amount of services we're providing, and then being burdened with additional services is not a fair or equitable relationship between the two of us. And I don't know the terms of the contract personally. I don't know if there's a term limit on that contract, if there's a renegotiation option on that contract. We had talked about that briefly in some other meetings, but we haven't really delved into it. And I share the concern with, we need to protect our citizens in Brevard, and we keep adding services that benefit citizens outside of the city, and it will not stop until we can get a contract that I think is equitable. So I do have a lot of concerns with that, and it's not in any way arguing with the needs of what our fire department needs. It's with how do we work with the county to kind of get this equitable. I'm just gonna put it in as blunt as terms as I can with that one. The second piece is aligned with what Mr. Baker said. I feel like there is a history in the city of what we're hearing from citizens and what's important. And I feel like not funding these paths, it's easy to look at these from the outside and say it's just a path. I have tried to say for a couple of years that these are huge engines for our economy, and they're critical for bringing people into our community and for establishing local businesses in our community. And we have now had almost a 20-year history of saying we're going to do it, and we haven't gotten it done. We have to find a way, I think, to move forward with this and continue the funding. Last year, I wasn't on the committee, on the council, but we kind of made a pledge to do that. So it's tough to say, but I also agree that we have had some additional expenses for our police this year. I think they're very valid and needed and necessary. And I do wonder if there's a compromise there with looking at these police vehicles, or at least one. And it kind of raises a question about, I know that these vehicles are on a 2-year or a rotation schedule. Since we know they're going to be replaced, is there a way to get that into into a budget request instead of a supplemental request? Because I would love to see if there's a way we could remove one of those cars this year, and I'm sorry to say that, but and either take some of those funds to help fund the trails, or you know, or I don't know the scenarios. We don't have to get into the nuts and bolts of it right now, but to me, we have to honor these pledges we're hearing from our community. I guess that's the kind of bottom line with that. And I'm not really eloquent at saying those things, but I think that's really important. And I've just heard a lot from our citizens about it. To me, ideally, in a perfect world, I would say we need to honor the 1 cent penny that we said we would do. Now, I don't know if we can actually do that, but I'm also worried we're going to lose sight of that in the future. You know, otherwise, I will say the moves we've done towards high concentrated waste and the move we've done with sewer and water, I think, are absolutely important and imperative. We're looking at some major infrastructure improvements with wastewater treatment coming up, and I'm really glad we're starting to get our eye to the future on that, because those are massive capital improvement projects, and it's another one where we cannot, as far as I understand it, have not reached a good agreement to do any kind of regionalization on wastewater. So it's kind of, we're on our own out here. So thanks to everyone on that. One more thing quickly. I think we also honored our nonprofits this year, and that was tough. And I really appreciate us working together to kind of make that happen. So again, that's kudos, but I think we still have some hard work ahead of us as well.
Ms. Holder?
I don't have anything deep to say. I'll say what I said in the budget meeting. First of all, Wilson, thank you. That was very detailed, and I know it's hard to put it all together. I can imagine that it was. It was hard for me to follow because your report was in a different order than ours. And so I would like to have it in your order as well as your commentary, because I felt like your commentary was helpful. As I said in the budget meeting, I am struggling with raising taxes, garbage increase, utility increase, and stormwater increase. That's 4 areas of increases. At the same time, when we go to the store, there are increases there. When we go to the grocery store, when we go to restaurants, power is going up. And many of us are still dealing with the same income. And so if everything is increasing except our income, in many cases, it's difficult to swallow. And so if we have somewhere to trim, I would like to see it trimmed in some of these areas that will help all of our citizens. And maybe not increase in some area this year. I don't know if it's been done or not, but I agree with, what they've said about working with the county or not having that partnership as we should financially. But, what would a feasibility study look like for us if we did not get 2 cars this year, just got 1? How would that look? And with that said, especially looking at the fire department, if we didn't have the additional staff that we need, I would hate to be that third person who gave the call. And so I understand the importance of, adding additional personnel. I really do. I'm just struggling with all of these 4 increases, and I said that in the budget meeting, and I'm just repeating it again. I'm really struggling with that. So I would like to see more done to see where we can trim and let that trim fall upon the public rather than increase in 4 areas, maybe increase 3 areas that we're looking at proposing increases. It's hard to tell this story, but I spoke with a lady since I've been here before I came to council, and she said that she had to sell her house because she couldn't afford the tax increase, and now she rents from that owner. At one time she owned her home, but she had to sell it. And so we're dealing with stories like that. So that's why I'm struggling with 4 areas of increase.
Anything else, Ms. Holder?
That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Morrow?
Very quickly, thank you very much. I think Wilson and Dean and the team, Becky and Alex, yes, it's presented extremely well. It's stated out there. We understand the issues. I think, in my view, the high strength waste thing, as you know, Wilson, was long overdue. And my sense is that we've got 3 months to figure out the laundries and the other folks, even where I work. My owner ain't gonna be too happy. He owns 7 acres of buildings. But saying that, that's a issue we have to deal with. It's a long time overdue. I agree with on the second point with the additional firefighters. I support whatever we need to do with police and fire over the Esteto Trail, in the sense that we're going to spend this year way more than our 1 cent allocation to the Acoustic Trail, thankfully for the grants and the NCDOT and the carbon credits and all that. And we have depended, and we've been, I'll have to defend the fact that the 3-year resolution thing was all predicated on if we got a grant. Well, we didn't get the grant, so we've lived off of grants, and we're talking about, do we really want to go spend our money, tax money, to extend a trail where it's in the DOT project where we're going to get DOT to pay for it? But we've got 10 projects out there that are likely to be funded in the future. Aaron, what do you think our options are there? How many, are we going to get any of those money? Yeah. We'll know when. When will we know?
The scores will come back this summer.
This summer. That's right. So within this year, we're going to know, and that's how we've sort of been able to do it. Without putting the burden on the taxpayer, we've relied on grants and projects like the carbon. So anyway. But I just got this on Thursday. So I'm studying it too, but I appreciate it. And thank you much, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Morrow. Mr. Manager, did you get what you needed from council?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right.
Oh, nope, excuse me, sorry. I misspoke.
Psych.
Yeah.
I need a commitment from you all to schedule the public hearing for May the 20th.
Council, do I have a motion to schedule the public hearing on the budget for May 20th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Baker, did you vote?
I was hoping we might have some discussion after it was seconded,
Okay.
because I do have a question on that. Where, can I ask that question?
Please do.
Thank you. So, given everything that you've heard tonight, what is your plan for that public hearing and is it a revised budget? Is it, what does that look like?
I plan on publishing the edits that I heard in an addendum that will accompany my recommended budget wherever it goes. So we'll publish it online and wherever else we send this document for public consumption. And so then the public hearing we'll ask folks to share their thoughts on sort of both possibilities.
Question.
Yes, Ms. Holder.
Do you know when it might be published that we can get it kind of in advance?
Oh, probably by Wednesday or this week.
This week,
Yeah,
okay.
we'll turn it around really quickly.
All right. Thank you.
Are you ready to vote, Mr.
I am, yes. Thank
All
you.
right. Do you vote yes or no?
I vote yes.
All right, I believe we have a unanimous vote of yes for the public hearing on May 20th. Okay. All right, I think we have now finished with the budget presentation, unless manager has something else. Okay. We'll move on to our public hearing. And we have one public hearing on the agenda, the proposed amendment to the City of Brevard Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 15, Board Roles, and our Assistant Planning Director, Aaron Bland, will present.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is a staff-initiated text amendment to Chapter 15 of the Unified Development Ordinance. Chapter 15 is where the roles and responsibilities are outlined of our city boards that relate to the zoning and land use planning for the city, specifically the Planning Board and the Board of Adjustment. So Chapter 160D of the U.S. or the North Carolina General Statutes outline specifically the responsibilities and duties that a planning board and a board of adjustment must do and others that they may do. And so this chapter was revised after 160D was initially adopted to update the different statutory references, but we did not do a specific review of those roles and responsibilities at the time. So that's what we're doing now to amend the UDO's specified duties and roles to match with what is allowed and mandated by the general statutes. So this amendment does four things to that regard. The first is that it eliminates anything listed that is not expressly authorized by the statutes. There are a few of those things in there under the planning board's roles that they do not have the authority to do under state law, so we're going to eliminate those. Going to make clear all the required duties and responsibilities if they're not already clear. And then any optional responsibilities that each board actually does and has a history of doing, we will leave those in there as well. This honestly really only impacts the planning board. The Board of Adjustments optional duties aren't as varied. And then last, and perhaps most importantly, we are proposing altering the makeup of the planning board. So as you know, there are city planning board members and ETJ planning board members. You appoint the city members, the county appoints the ETJ members. The statutes require that the ETJ must have proportional representation based on the population of residents in those areas, inside the city and inside the ETJ. And that proportionality is supposed to be reviewed after every decennial census. Well, we have not done that yet following the 2020 census. So since we're making some changes to this section of the UDO already, we want to make those changes now. The planning board, or the Board of Adjustment rather, cannot be improved. Its ratio is a 1.5 and our target ratio is 2.5. So we're not proposing any changes to the Board of Adjustment membership, but we are proposing that one ETJ seat on the planning board be converted to a city seat. Our current makeup of 4 city and 3 ETJ gives us a ratio of 1.33. Again, we're looking for a ratio of 2.5. If we change it to 5 city and 2 ETJ, we have that exact target ratio. So that is our recommendation in that regard. And just to be clear, the planning board, as they do with all text amendments, has discussed these amendments and forwards on their favorable recommendation to you. So they reviewed all those role changes and the membership changes. They also forward you the attached statement of consistency as required by state law as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the specifics of the text.
Okay, council? Any questions? Mr. Wise?
Just, when would that changeover kind of take place, and what happens to the other ETJ member? Are they just dismissed, or?
What we would do is we would advertise for a city seat, and until it is filled, that ETJ member would just continue to serve until it gets filled by a city appointee, in which case they would just roll off.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Holder?
Is that city seat for the committee,
It's for the planning board.
the planning board? Okay, that's what I mean. Thank you.
Ms. Morrow? Mr. Daniel? Mr. Baker?
I had the same question as Mr. Wise, so thank you for answering that. My other question was regarding the Board of Adjustment and the fact that, no changes were recommended because we couldn't get to the goal. I'm just wondering why we couldn't add 2 city seats to the Board of Adjustment. Wouldn't that
We
equal?
could
the
add
ratio?
seats, but it is a very difficult board to keep full. So adding seats, I think, would be problematic for us to find 2 more willing board members.
Okay. And I know that we have alternates. Do we have 2 alternates that are city residents?
We do have 2 alternates that are city member, let me make sure I get that right. We do have city and 1 ETJ alternate, but you can't really think of the alternates when it comes to this because an alternate can fill any vacant seat. So the ETJ alternate doesn't only get to fill an ETJ regular member's vacant seat. So you need to base that proportionality test on the regular membership.
Okay. Well, I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but I do think that if we already have alternates, I wonder about converting, and they are in the city, I wonder about converting them to full members of the board in order to get closer to the ratio that we're looking at. And, I'll leave that up to staff to decide whether that's a viable option going forward.
Having alternates is very helpful. If you don't have the alternates, then you can run into quorum issues.
Yeah. Okay.
There are also, just so you know, the Board of Adjustment, there are several procedures that they conduct where there have to be supermajority found. And so the larger the group is, the larger the supermajority has to be. Like 4 out of 5 votes, for instance, for a variance is a requirement, and those kind of things. So keeping it at a manageable size is probably a better approach rather than trying to expand it too broadly for a bunch of voting members.
All right, this is a public hearing, so I will officially open the public hearing. Nobody signed up to speak at the public hearing, so I will now officially close the public hearing. Okay, moving on to our consent and information. The following items are on the consent agenda. 1, Proclamation 2024-07 National Day of Prayer. 2, Proclamation 2024-11 National Bike Month. 3, Proclamation number 2024-12 Public Service Recognition Week. 4, Tax Settlement Report, March of 2024. 5, Budget Amendment for the Estateau Trail Project. 6, Budget Amendment, Heart of Brevard. 7, Finance Report at 3/31/2024. 8, Debt Financing Fire Truck. 9, Conveyance of Property Fire Department. 10, Funding Offer Acceptance, Sewer Pump Stations Rehab. SRP WARP 0236. 11, Ordinance declaring road closures for special event White Squirrel Weekend. 12, Resolution regarding Clemson Plaza Mental Health Art Installation. 13, City Council Public Works and Utilities Committee Minutes, January 3rd of 2024. 14, City Council Rosenwald Community Advisory Board minutes, January 11th, 2024. 15, City Council Public Safety Committee minutes, January 22nd, 2024. 16, City Council Housing Committee minutes, February 13th, 2024. 17, City Council Downtown Master Plan Committee minutes, February 14th, 2024. 18, City Council Rosenwald Community Advisory Board minutes, February 15th, 2024. 19, City Council Finance, Human Resources, and Citizen Appointment Committee minutes, February 26, 2024. 20, City Council Public Safety Committee minutes, February 26, 2024. 21, City Council Public Works Utilities Committee minutes, March 6, 2024. 22, City Council Public Works and Utilities Committee Special Meeting Minutes, March 13, 2024. 23, City Council Parks, Trails, and Recreation Committee Minutes, March 20th, 2024. 24, City Council Finance Human 24. 25, City Council Public Safety Committee Minutes, April 2nd, 2024. And 26, City Council Public Works Utilities Committee Minutes, April 3rd, 2024. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda is approved. Good job. Yes. We have tonight no unfinished business and no new business. So at this point, we will move on to remarks and future agenda considerations. And we will start with Mr. Wise.
Thanks, y'all, for helping us through the budget stuff. I'm not going to be neutral or impartial. Denise is amazing. Thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you very much.
I know you have to maintain that role, but I do not. Yeah, so this budget process is really amazing to go through and daunting. So I want to thank all of my council members also, and the mayor, Mac, Wilson, all you guys for helping me through that.
Ms. Holder.
I want to ditto what Wise just said to Denise. Thank you so much and congratulations.
Thank you.
Well-deserved honor. And to Wilson, I'll say again, thank you so much. You think this is hard, try to balance my budget at home. Thank you.
Mr. Morrow.
Add my congratulations to Denise for all those things that the mayor reminded us of.
Mr. Baker.
Ooh, caught me off guard. You're going out of order. Thank you. That's good. It's good. I do have a couple things, and I'm going to start on a little bit of a negative note, so I apologize for that. But I do want to address some comments that a local government official made recently. I'm sure if you keep up with the Transylvania Times, you know what I'm talking about. And I just want to say that, we can disagree on policy, and in many ways, our whole system of government is built so that we do disagree on policy, and we have a forum for talking about those disagreements and discussing a way forward. But things like racism and hatred and bigotry and discrimination are not something that we should have in our local politics. And I think it's worth repeating that when something like what occurred and what was said is said. Mostly because, we have citizens who might fall into some of the categories that experience racism and bigotry, and they should not have to live in a place where a local government official, we're a small community, and I can only imagine what that might feel like as a citizen, to have someone who's representing you on a very local level repeat some pretty bigoted things. The second thing I want to talk about is another thing that unfortunately comes up nationally a lot, but I've just seen recently the topic of misinformation, even at a local level, seems to be running a little bit out of control in our little town of 8,000 people and in our county of 34,000 people. Again, we're a really small, close-knit community, and there's really no reason why we should have local issues just fraught with misinformation and just wildly false things being spread. And a lot of times we like to blame social media, but I don't think social media is the source of misinformation. I guarantee you that 30 years ago at a coffee shop in Brevard, there were people sitting around spreading some pretty horrible rumors about this and that. But it certainly does make it easy for us to all see that misinformation. I think it's important for us all to address it when we see it and try to correct that misinformation. Okay, done with the negative stuff. We're moving on to some positive things, and I'll be brief. I spent the weekend down in Greer, South Carolina with my son's youth soccer team and a whole bunch of other academy teams from TISA. And it's amazing to go to a tournament like that and interact with other people from other places and be surrounded by people from your own community. And I was really struck by the positivity and the warmth and the spirit of competition, but also really the kindness that our group here in Brevard showed while we were down there. And I don't want to veer into the negative, but I will just say it was in stark contrast to some of the attitudes that we saw from some of the people on our opposing team. So, but it was heartening to just be in another place with a bunch of people from your city and have them representing such a spirit of positivity. So, also shout out to the U11 boys who won that tournament, and really proud of them for that. And then finally, I want to talk about a couple of events coming up. Bike to School Day is on Wednesday. That's Bike, Walk, or Roll to School Day. And the Brevard Bike Alliance, who we've heard from earlier, has organized several events at our local schools. They're meeting up at various places within the city, including the city's sports complex, the Depot, which is, I will add, a great trailhead, and the library in order to roll out to school. So look for more information on that. And then Bike to Work Day, which I will definitely be participating in, is May 17th, a Friday. And then I did want to say, because it got a little bit buried in the consent agenda, which was very, very long, but May is National Bike Month. So I just wanted to give that a shout out here again. And on a related note, there is a bill which I admittedly don't know as much about as I probably should, but it's House Bill 198. And it's making its way through the state legislature, and it's a reform bill for NCDOT. And to a point earlier by Councilman Morrow, there's actually a rule on the books, which I was not aware of, that the state has prohibited NCDOT funding for projects which are solely focused on pedestrian infrastructure and bicycling infrastructure. So NCDOT can pay for those things, but they only can pay for them if they're also attached to a project that is improving things for vehicles. And House Bill 198 would actually change that and, as I understand it, and allow for NCDOT funding to fund, standalone pedestrian projects like a sidewalk or a crossing, or even a bike lane or other bicycling infrastructure. So I'm just learning about this. I do think, in the future, I may ask this council to consider a draft resolution in support of a bill like that or parts of that bill. So I will bring that forward once I know more. Thank you.
Mr. Daniel?
Yeah, a couple things. I'd like to kind of expand on my comments about the budget earlier. I feel like this budget is a reality check for us in a lot of ways. There are a lot of things that we have said that we were going to do that, heck, we may not be able to do them. But we've made promises that we were going to do these things. And the things that this budget is doing that I think are so important, not only our staff, but also working on our infrastructure and things that have been put on the back burner for a little bit too long. And in the meantime, we've been doing these other things, these fun and shiny things. But again, they're promises. They're promises that we made, and we may not be able to keep all those promises. I personally can accept that. But I think I personally also will work my hardest to keep those promises. And I think that's part of what this discussion has been about today. As we've talked about our reaction to this proposed budget is working to keep promises that we've made. That's enough on the budget for me. But the other thing I want to address, and that is, and I think this is being taken up by public safety already, but in my neighborhood is the Railroad Avenue District. And parking there is out of control. I've discussed it with members of the police department and with members of the public safety. And I just want to be on the record that we need to get some signage. We need to get, take what steps are appropriate there. But I just am offering my support for that. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Attorney?
We do have, unfortunately, a couple of closed sessions, but aside from that, nothing. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Just thank you, everyone, for the kind words this evening and the recognition. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Mr. Manager?
Yes, one update. At our public safety meeting a few weeks ago, I guess maybe a month ago, we had some residents of the Cherry Street neighborhood come and ask if there was anything we could do to prohibit transfer trucks from turning into their neighborhood and getting stuck. Trucks that were intending to go to Mountain Industrial Drive. And to follow up on their request, we reached out to the state, since Old Hendersonville Highway is a state road, and asked if they could erect some signs on either side of Cherry Street to warn truck drivers that, no, you're not supposed to turn there, you're supposed to turn here. And they've done that, so I just wanted to let the council know that NCDOT has done us a nice favor, and hopefully the residents of Cherry Street won't have some 18-wheelers stuck on the bridge anymore.
Thank you. Okay, and just a few comments. One, I do want to thank staff for the incredible amount of work that has gone into the budget. Probably the biggest responsibility that we, as both the city staff and as elected officials have each year, is to come up with that balanced budget. And, unlike the federal government, we cannot have an unbalanced budget. So our revenue and our expenses have to be balanced. And it is no easy job, and I know staff has worked incredibly hard for months on this, but the last few weeks have been a real marathon. And I just want to say thank you, everybody, for an incredible job. It's a complicated budget. You can see that, trying to balance the current operations that we have here in this city, and then also plan for the future on what we need in terms of new projects, capital expenditures, is no easy job. And so I just want to say thank you all for a great job. And I also want to encourage the public. This is your budget. This is your money. This is, your opportunity on May 20th, that council just approved, is the public hearing on the budget. That is when we hear from you about what you think about the proposal that was put in place tonight. And I believe, as manager mentioned, there will be an addendum with some other options based on council's feedback. But please let us know what you think about all of the different proposals and take the time to look at the document. We've put it out in many different forums, different ways to get at it so that you can read the document. So the budget is certainly one of the most important and certainly one of the most challenging jobs that we have. I do want to remind everybody, tomorrow we will be, for the first time, we will be installing a temporary interactive art exhibit at Clemson Plaza in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, and it is called the Hope Wall. And I encourage you to go over to it. It will be up until right before White Squirrel Weekend, so it'll be up for about the next 3 weeks, to participate, to write your messages of hope on that. I think it is a tremendous opportunity for our community to once again express ourselves and to show that support that we have for people that maybe are having a hard time, that need to be reminded and need to be connected with more hope. So the Hope Wall will be going up tomorrow in one of our first sort of interactive uses out there at Clemson Plaza. I believe it'll be up and operational by 3:30. So please take advantage of that. Also, again, a reminder, we are working on, besides all the things in the budget, and many of these sort of relate back, we are working on our age-friendly community initiatives. And I encourage you to please take that survey. We want to know, what do you think about how we're doing right now? And then what do you think we should be prioritizing and working on to make our community more age-friendly? So again, there are some hard copies over there. There's the QR code and the link, and we will also be publishing that. It's also right on our website, but I think we'll also be putting it out on our Facebook page soon with how to get to it. So please just take a minute to do that. This Thursday is the next Meet the Mayor. I, too, have spent a lot of time dealing with misinformation. I will agree with Mr. Baker that there seems to be an absolute plethora of incredibly strange facts being passed around by people. And if you think you see it, I will tell you, I see an awful lot of it, not just on Facebook. I get the phone calls, I get the texts. I have people showing up in person to talk to me about things that are just amazing what they think is going on. So trying to get accurate information out there is one of my goals and one of my roles as mayor. And I am holding this Meet the Mayor on Thursday, this Thursday from 11 to 1. And I have been encouraging people that if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you would just want to know the actual facts on what is happening, come and ask your elected officials. So it is at the Mary C. Jenkins Thursday from 11 to 1, and I hold these every month. I hold these every single month. So there are a lot of ways to get information, and we post an incredible amount of information on our website, on our Facebook page. And I encourage people, go to the source and get the real information about what is happening in town. And We also have a couple of very big events coming up the end of this month. We have White Squirrel Weekend. This is our 20th anniversary of White Squirrel Weekend. That will be the 24th to the 26th, Friday afternoon, evening till Sunday evening. Lots of fun, lots of things for the family. And then, of course, on the Monday, the 27th, we will have Memorial Day. And I will just mention that that is a very special day. That is a day that lives in my heart for all of my shipmates who did not come back after serving in the military. And so I urge you to join me at 10 o'clock on Monday morning to remember those that gave the ultimate sacrifice for us and our democracy. Thank you. And I think with that, we need to go into closed session. So do I have a motion to go into closed session?
For economic.
Oh, for economic development.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Please clear the room and please stop our transmission.